Something arrived at the Coldwater Police Department on a quiet Monday morning in late August. No one saw who delivered it. There was no return address, no postage, just an envelope, unmarked, sealed in clear plastic, left on the front desk like it had always been there. Inside was a single page of sheet music, handwritten, faded, and lined with familiar lyrics. "Oh, come to the garden, all ye faithful." A hymn, but not just any hymn. This was the final arrangement sung by the Unity Church Youth Choir. On the very afternoon they disappeared. All 6 members. Gone. Vanished during Saturday rehearsal in the church garden in 2001. And for 9 years, no one had heard a word. Until now. Coldwater, New Hampshire, is the kind of place you only hear about once something goes wrong. A single blinking stoplight, 2 churches, 1 gas station, and a history everyone pretends not to know. Back in 2001, the Unity Church Choir was small, but tight-knit. 6 teens. Hannah Bellamy, Jude Talley, Milo Haynes, Connor Reese, and twins Daisy and Sierra McCall. All of them local, all of them talented. They met every Saturday in the garden behind the church for summer rehearsals. By all accounts, they were preparing for a regional performance. But on May 26, 2001, they sang one final song, and were never seen again. There were no screams, no signs of struggle, no clear evidence of where they went. Pastor Glenn Morley, who'd briefly stepped into the church to retrieve a lost hymnal, returned to an empty garden. He thought they were playing a prank. But the choir didn't come back. Not after 5 minutes. Not after 5 hours. Not ever. The police were called that evening. Detectives searched the church, the surrounding woods, the nearby creek. No blood, no tracks, no bodies. Just the leftover sheet music scattered across the benches, and a gentle wind that made the garden feel quieter than usual. Some said it was a mass runaway. Others whispered about something darker. But without physical evidence, the case went cold. Until that envelope arrived. Marcus Ellery, the lead detective now in his late 30s, had just finished his coffee when he saw the sheet music on his desk. It had no identifying marks, just a small, scribbled message on the back corner. "Sing it backwards to see." The handwriting matched old samples from the case, specifically from Milo Haynes, the choir's pianist. But Milo had been gone for almost a decade. Marcus scanned the sheet music line by line. It was an altered version of the original hymn. Several notes had been circled in pencil. Others were missing, entirely erased. In one margin, just barely visible, was a sentence. Faded, uneven, childlike, where the wind forgets. The sheet music was turned over to forensics the same day. But Marcus kept a scan of it, and that night he played it. Alone. Note for note. He played it in reverse. What he heard was no longer a hymn. It was something else. Off-key in places. Dissonant. And just under the final chord, layered beneath the harmony, was a faint sound that had no business being there. A whisper. 5 words. "Go to the Stones. Quickly." The next morning, Marcus returned to the town's records. There was only one place in Coldwater ever referred to as the Stones. A circle of large, weather-worn pillars hidden in a clearing just past Miller's Ridge. Locals used to sneak out there decades ago. But by 2001, it had been abandoned. The trail was overgrown, the path nearly gone. But Marcus found it, and in the soil at the center of the stone circle, he found something buried. A VHS tape, wrapped in plastic, unlabeled. He brought it back to the station. Dusty VCR, tiny break-room TV. He hit play. The footage flickered to life. The choir, alive, laughing, practicing. Milo held the camera. Sierra waved. Jude hummed along while tuning the piano. It was dated May 26, 2001. Roughly 10 minutes before they vanished. Marcus watched, then watched again. What he saw next would change everything. Because after the choir finished their final rehearsal, the camera kept rolling. They moved toward the back of the garden. One by one, Daisy called out, "Hey, you guys, look at this." Then silence. Then nothing. Empty garden. No one returns. And then, a figure. Blurry. Unmoving. Wearing what looked like a long coat. Walking slowly past the edge of the frame. No footsteps. No sound. And no face. Just a shadow where a person's head should have been. Then static. Then black. Marcus sat in silence for several minutes. He played the tape again. And again. What he found next wasn't on the tape. It was on his desk. An envelope. Red. No name. No return address. Inside, a printed still from the VHS. Same garden. Same time of day. But this photo showed something not visible on the video. A second figure. Standing in the archway. Watching the choir from behind. And beneath the photo, a typed message in sharp, capital letters. Some songs shouldn't be sung again. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He just sat at his desk, watching the VHS footage, over and over. Something about it felt wrong, like there was more there, like something had been edited without cutting. He stared at the timestamp. No skips, no jumps, just a moment that didn't add up. The choir disappears, but the tape doesn't cut out immediately. It lingers, for 10 full seconds. Just the empty garden, wind rustling, no voices, no birds, no movement except for the swing of the arch's shadow. And then, in the far corner of the frame, a flicker, barely a shape. Marcus paused it, zoomed in. There, near the willow tree, stood a figure, not moving, not looking at the camera, just standing, watching where the choir had been. Then the tape ends. He rewound it, paused again, stared. It wasn't any of the choir members. Not Milo. Not Jude. Not the McCall twins. The build was wrong. Too tall. Too broad. And where the face should have been. Just like the camera refused to focus on it. He tried calling forensics, but it was past 1 a.m. So instead he drove. Back to the garden. Coldwater's Unity Church looked exactly the same. Peeling white paint. Empty lot. An old wind chime still hanging from the chapel door. But the garden, it had changed. The benches were gone. The archway still stood. The vines had choked half its frame. The once lush grass was brittle, brown, but the willow tree remained, now rotted at the base, dead for years. Still it leaned, just slightly, as if listening. Marcus stepped into the center of the garden, and everything went quiet. No wind, no crickets, just that oppressive kind of stillness that fills your ears when sound should be there, but isn't. He stayed until dawn. He didn't know why. The next morning, Marcus visited the last known person to see the choir before they vanished. Pastor Glenn Morley. He was retired now. Lived in assisted care a few miles outside town. Marcus brought the tape, played it for him. The pastor watched in silence. He didn't blink when the figure appeared. He just whispered, "I thought I imagined that part." Marcus looked at him. "You remember it?" "I remember the quiet." Glenn paused. "I stepped inside the church for no more than 2 minutes. The choir was mid-rehearsal. Milo had just finished tuning. Then, he stared at the floor. I came back out and they were gone." Marcus leaned forward. No sound. None. No signs of struggle. Nothing. It was like they stepped out of the moment. Pastor Glenn reached into a drawer, pulled out something wrapped in cloth. A cassette tape. He set it on the table. "This was recorded the week before they vanished," he said. "Their final full choir rehearsal. It was meant to be archived for the church library." Marcus nodded. He took it. Later that night, he digitized the tape. The recording was soft, warm. You could hear the leaves in the background. A breeze. Laughter. Then the song. It began like any other hymn. But halfway through, there was a shift. A moment where the melody bent. Not off key. Just wrong. Like a mirror reflecting sound the wrong way. And under the voices, there was a hum. Low. Almost inaudible. But there. It didn't match any note. It wasn't part of the harmony. It just sat beneath everything. Like something was listening from underneath. Marcus ran the audio through his software. Enhanced the waveform. Cleaned the frequencies. That's when he found it. A voice, buried in the left channel. 6 words. Don't let him keep singing alone. The next day, Marcus received a second envelope. Not in the mail. Not dropped off. Just placed on his desk. No one saw who did it. Inside was a single photo. A still image. From the same VHS footage. But not one Marcus had taken. In this image, the choir was just leaving frame. And behind them, in the archway, a second figure again. Closer now. Barely visible. But it was there. And under the photo, another note. You missed what's behind the music. That night, Marcus played the cassette backward. Not just reversed. Layered. Reversed. Slowed. Echo removed. The song warped into something else entirely. A pattern emerged in the gaps. Spaces where the choir had paused. Moments of breath. And in those pauses, another tone. A chord that didn't belong. When mapped out on paper, the pattern resembled something strange. Not a melody, but a shape. 7 points. A circle. With one in the center. Marcus drew it out. And stared. It looked eerily like the garden formation. 6 spots where the choir had stood. And a 7th. In the middle. He drove back to the garden that night. He stood in the center. The 7th point. And he whispered. Jude. The wind picked up. Soft. Steady. It passed through the arch. Bent the grass. And in the distance, he heard humming. Faint. Broken. But steady. They weren't just names on a missing persons report. Each member of the Unity Church choir had a story. A rhythm. A voice. And if you listen closely, you can still feel them. Hannah Bellamy was the natural leader. 17. Confident. She sang soprano and kept everyone on schedule. People said Hannah was the kind of girl who could walk into a room and pull gravity with her. But she also had a softness, especially toward the younger ones, especially toward Jude. Jude Talley was the pianist. 16. Quiet. Strange, in the way gifted kids often are. He wrote music on scraps of napkins, hummed to himself in the lunch line, and carried a notebook filled with half-formed melodies and strange little diagrams no one else could read. He was also the youngest. Then there was Milo Haynes. 17. Tall. Always filming. If the group had a memory, it was Milo. He was the one who brought the VHS camera every week, captured behind-the-scenes footage, interviewed the others for fun, wrote inside jokes in their sheet music. He was the one who recorded their final rehearsal, the one that ends in silence. Sierra and Daisy McCall were twins. 17. But not identical. Sierra was more introverted. Harmony. A thinker. Daisy was playful. Fast-talking. Slightly reckless. They balanced each other. One always watching. The other always moving. And finally, Connor Reese. Baritone. 18. The oldest. And often the buffer when things got tense. He was calm. Always had a joke ready. The kind of guy who made everything feel less serious. People say he was the glue. The kind of person who never expected to be part of a mystery. They met every Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. in the garden behind Unity Church. They warmed up with familiar hymns, then tried experimental arrangements written by Milo and Jude. According to Pastor Glenn and a few archived notes, something changed in the last 3 weeks before they vanished. Milo began pushing for a new piece, an original. He said it would be their exit song. No one knew what that meant. Exit. Some thought he meant the end of summer performance. Others joked he meant exit from boring church music. But there was one person who seemed uncomfortable with it. Jude. In the margins of one of his saved notebooks, he'd written 3 phrases over and over. We shouldn't finish it. Some songs aren't for us. Don't open it too wide. At the time, it meant nothing. But now, it sounds like a warning. 3 days before the disappearance, Daisy told her mother something strange. She said the garden felt off. The wind didn't blow through like it used to. There were no birds, no insects, just stillness. Her mother thought she was being dramatic, but Daisy insisted. It feels like something is watching, she'd said. Like the air is waiting for something. That same week, Milo brought a new version of the hymn. He called it the one we left singing. It wasn't in the church's official records. In fact, the only known copy is the one that was mailed to the police 9 years later. The same one that started all this. Marcus returned to that copy again. The notes didn't match traditional hymn structure. Some staves were completely blank. Others contained only rests, as if the song wasn't meant to be heard fully, but felt. And at the very bottom of the final page, written in faint pencil, was a line, 6 shall follow. One must hold. The phrase echoed in Marcus's mind. He looked back at the still photo, the one of the figure in the archway. If the choir had vanished, all 6 of them, who was standing in the arch, and who was left behind? He went to the church archives the next day. The librarian, a retired music teacher named Ivy, remembered the choir well. She'd even attended one of their rehearsals. They were brilliant, she said, but that last song, it made the air feel wrong. Marcus asked her if she remembered the one we left singing. She frowned, then led him to a storage room no one had opened in years. She handed him an old binder, dusted, cracked at the spine. Inside were copies of several hymns, and at the very back, glued into place, with yellowed tape, was the title page, the one we left singing. The notes, however, had been scraped off, erased. Only the title remained, and below it, faint indentations like someone had written hard, then ripped the page away. Marcus shaded the back with pencil. A single phrase appeared. Still singing, still holding, still here. That night, Marcus dreamed of the choir. He saw them, not in motion, but frozen, like a paused tape, standing in a circle, eyes closed, mouths open but no sound. And in the center, Jude, not singing, just watching, holding a note in his head that no one else could hear. When Marcus woke, he had one thought repeating in his mind. What if Jude never left? There's something deeply unsettling about silence when you're waiting for sound. Marcus Ellery sat alone in the church garden the next morning. The original sheet music was laid out in front of him, fluttering gently in the breeze. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. He didn't even know why. Only that something was pulling him here. The willow stump still sat in the center of the space, crumbling, hollow. The benches had aged, cracked, warped under time and weather. And yet, when Marcus closed his eyes, he could almost see them. Hannah laughing, Milo filming, Jude lost in thought, the twins nudging each other, Connor smiling behind them all. 6 lives, just 10 feet from where he now sat. He replayed the VHS footage again in his head, frame by frame. They'd followed Daisy toward the edge of the garden. Then they vanished. No panic, no rush, no noise. And then, that figure, blurred, faceless, passed quietly through the frame. A shape that didn't belong. Then a memory surfaced. A name. Something from the earliest days of the case. 2001. A boy. William Adley. Back then, William was just 16. A runaway. He told police he was camping near the church that night. He claimed he saw something. A light. And something moving through the woods that wasn't quite human. He was dismissed. His report buried. Written off as unstable. Or high. But now, after the tapes, after the whispers, after the music, Marcus wasn't so sure. It took days to track William down. No address. No job on file. But a tip from a shelter in Burlington led Marcus to him. Now 35. Thin, quiet, worn down by time. William agreed to talk, on one condition: no recordings. They met in a corner booth of a quiet diner. William barely touched his coffee. "I lied about some of it," he said. "I didn't see them disappear. I was too far." "But you saw something," Marcus pressed. William nodded slowly. The light, it wasn't a flash. It was like the air peeled open. He looked up. "You ever see heat waves over pavement? Like that, but standing up, in the trees." He paused. "I heard them singing. The choir. That weird song. It sounded bent, like notes falling apart midair." Then he leaned in. When the light appeared, the music just cut out, like someone pulled the plug on the world. "And after that, I ran." Marcus waited. William hesitated. "But I dream about it. Still." He looked down. "It's always the same. The choir's there, singing, but the sound's missing. Like they're trapped in mute." Marcus asked gently, "Do you see them?" "Not really. Just the shape of them." He looked up, eyes tired. "And something else." "What kind of something?" William didn't answer for a long time. Finally, he whispered, something just outside the moment, listening. That night, Marcus pulled up the cassette recording again, the same one Daisy and Sierra's mom had kept. He slowed it down, then slower, slower still, down to where every breath stretched like a thread through time. And there, beneath the singing, beneath the laughter, beneath even the hum, was a second frequency. A tone. Low, vibrating, not musical, but mechanical. He ran it through software. Filtered, isolated, measured. It was 18.9 hertz, barely audible to human ears, known by sound engineers as the fear frequency, a vibration that induces dread, hallucination, disorientation. Marcus sat back in his chair. What if Milo added it on purpose? He brought his findings to Ivy. She listened closely. Her hands trembled slightly. Milo used to talk about tones, frequencies that move things. Marcus nodded. He called this their exit piece. She added, "I thought he meant the end of summer." "Maybe he did," Marcus said. "Or maybe he meant the end of something else." They returned to the hidden garden the next morning, through the woods, past the old slope, into the quiet. The circle was waiting. The birds didn't sing here. No buzzing insects, only stillness, and silence that felt intentional. They stood at the edge. Then Ivy knelt down. "Marcus," she whispered. He stepped closer. There, under the leaves, was a perfect circle etched into the earth, burned faintly into the soil. 7 small divots surrounded it, 6 around the edges, and 1 in the middle. Marcus counted. 6 points like a formation, and a 7th at the center. His voice barely rose above the wind. "The one we left singing." They didn't speak much after that, just stood there, letting the shape, the idea settle. Not a disappearance, a design, not chaos, placement. That night, Marcus watched the VHS one final time. At the very end, one frame only. Something flickered in the stained glass window. A reflection. All 6 choir members were gone from the garden, but one figure remained, standing still, facing forward, head slightly tilted. It was Jude, still there, still holding. The human eye is trained to look forward, but sometimes the truth only appears when we look back. Marcus stared at a single frame, paused on his computer screen. The VHS footage, zoomed in, light enhanced, cropped, and in the far corner, barely visible through the glass of the church's stained window, was a reflection, not of the camera, not of the choir, but of someone else. Still, alone, watching. He sharpened the frame, leaned in, and finally saw what he hadn't wanted to believe. Jude Talley. 6 vanished, but 1 stayed behind, and the camera had caught his ghosted outline in the window. Marcus sat in silence. Why would Jude have remained? Was it a choice? Was he left? Or was he held? He reopened the red envelope, the one that had come with the printed photo. He looked again. The shadowed figure behind the arch was not any of the 16s. That meant someone or something else had been present that day, watching them, waiting, and perhaps taking them one by one, until only Jude remained. Marcus drove back to visit Meredith McCall, mother of the twins, Sierra and Daisy. She opened the door before he knocked, like she'd been waiting. Inside, everything smelled like lemon tea and old wood. He told her what he'd found: the reflection, the garden's 7th footprint, the lingering presence of Jude. Meredith listened without interrupting, then said softly, "He was always last." Marcus looked at her. "Jude," she nodded. He packed the hymnals, tuned the piano after the rest left. Hannah used to call him the choir ghost. Said he was always in the background, always trailing behind. She disappeared into a back room, returned with an old photo album. She flipped to the final page. A Polaroid, faded, bent. The choir rehearsing in the garden. 16s. And just behind them, half out of frame, Jude, standing alone, watching the group. Almost like he wasn't part of the moment, but apart from it. Back at the station, Marcus pulled out the sheet music. The one mailed to police, the trigger of everything. He flipped it over again. The faded words, the graphite pressure marks. Sing it backwards to see. He now believed that line wasn't about music. It was about perception, about looking behind what you think is real. He returned to the VHS one more time, and this time, he didn't focus on the choir. He didn't focus on the arch. He looked at the background, beyond the garden, beyond the willow tree. There, near the woods, something moved. Crouched low, too small for a person, but moving, just before the footage cut out, like a presence had always been watching, but not yet ready to step forward. He needed help. He called Etta Barnes, a digital forensics analyst from the state lab. Smart, quiet, didn't ask questions she didn't need answers to. Marcus handed her the VHS, and the still photos, and the enhanced scans. "You think it's real?" she asked. "I think it's not fake," he said. That was enough. Etta called back just 10 hours later. "Not days. Hours. You need to come here," she said. Marcus met her in a cold, fluorescent basement lab. She didn't say much. She just played the last 30 seconds of the VHS on a loop. "Watch this closely," she said. And there it was. A loop. 2 seconds. Barely noticeable. But it repeated. Someone had spliced it in, then masked the timeline. To cover up what? Etta removed the loop. And for the first time, the footage played as it was originally recorded. And in those 2 seconds that had been erased from time, the truth revealed itself. The garden. Still. Empty. Then, a blur of upward motion. Not running. Not walking. But being pulled. From the grass. Like a thread unraveling into thin air. There were no hands. No figures. Just an unnatural absence of gravity. And then, silence. Then, black. Marcus's breath caught. Something had taken them. And someone had deliberately tried to cover that moment up. But not completely. Almost like they wanted it found. Eventually. That night, Ivy called. Her voice shook. "I got something in the mail," she said. She wouldn't say what. Only that Marcus needed to see it himself. He arrived in 20 minutes. She handed him a navy blue envelope. No address. No writing. Inside, a photo. Black and white. Dated on the back. October 1901. It showed a group of people, 6 of them, gathered in a semicircle in a garden. But not this choir. Not this era. They wore old-fashioned clothing. Early 20th century. The same garden. The same arch. And behind them, a piano. Rusting. At the keys sat a young man. Head tilted. Expression unreadable. The 7th. And though the photo was over a century old, the figure at the piano Looked exactly like Jude Talley. Marcus turned the photo over again. Just one line typed in faint ink. He never left. He didn't sleep. Just stared at the photo. At the old piano. At the familiar shadow of someone who did not belong to this time. Who maybe never truly did. At dawn, Marcus went back to the second garden. He took nothing. No flashlight. No recorder. Just the photo. And the hymn book. He stepped to the center of the 7 points, where the grass still sagged slightly. He sat. He waited. At first, there was only wind. Then, humming. Soft. Low. Almost thoughtful. Not a song. Not a performance. But a presence. A boy. Still singing. Still holding. Because someone had to. The garden was quiet. Not silent. Just holding its breath. Marcus stood in the center of the clearing. 7 impressions in the earth surrounded him. 6 faint outlines, like the choir still stood there. One in the middle, deeper than the rest. This is where it always ended. Or maybe where it began. He placed a photo from 1901 on the willow stump. Then the original sheet music. And finally, Jude's hymn book. The one they all thought was lost. No birds chirped. No insects hummed. And yet, from somewhere in the wind, a sound began to rise. Not loud. Not even musical at first. Just a low tone. As if the ground itself remembered what had happened. As if it had been waiting for someone to listen. Then, a voice. Close. Familiar. A boy's. Did you bring it? Marcus turned. No one was there. But the voice had been real. Soft. Almost hopeful. The page of the hymn book turned on its own. Just one. The final page. Once blank. Now, ink slowly began to bloom across it. Like memory remembering itself. Each word appeared one by one. Heard, not sung. Carried, not followed. One voice must remain to hold the others. And beneath it, he is still holding. Marcus didn't move. Didn't speak. He just closed the book. And whispered, "You don't have to anymore." But the wind didn't stop. It curled softly around him. And from somewhere far, or maybe very close, a hum answered back. He brought the book to Ivy. They stared at the writing together. Neither of them said what they were both thinking. That this wasn't over. That maybe it never really could be. A week later, the Coldwater police officially closed the case. No new leads. No remains. No one to arrest. The file was sealed. The envelope, the VHS tape, the sheet music. Archived. Forgotten again. Like so many things in Coldwater. But Marcus kept something. The hymn book. He didn't read it anymore. He just kept it in a drawer. And some nights, when the house was especially still, he'd sit beside it, listening. Not for music, but for that pause between songs. The breath that comes before something returns. Time passed. Ivy moved to Maine. The Unity Church was torn down in 2012, replaced by a community center. The old garden was paved over. They removed the willow stump. No one remembered where the choir had stood. No one wanted to. But years later, 9 years after the envelope first arrived, something appeared on Marcus's doorstep. No stamp. No address. Just a small black cassette. Unlabeled. He played it. And a voice filled the room. It was Jude. "I don't know how long it's been," he said. "There's no time here. Not really. But I think you can still hear me." Low static fades under voice. "I'm not gone. I'm not trapped. I'm holding. That's what it wants. One to stay behind. One to keep singing the silence closed. They're safe. The others, wherever they are." Another pause. Then softer. "But I need to rest now." The tape ends with 7 piano notes. The first 6 are clear. The 7th cuts off halfway, as if the hand playing it had finally let go. 3 months later, the foundation crew digging under the community center unearthed a fragment of the old garden wall. And just beneath it, 7 stones, perfectly placed, weathered, unmarked, except one. When flipped over, faintly carved on the underside, JT, he listened so others could leave. No one in town knew what it meant. The stone was sealed back in the foundation, face down, forgotten again. But Marcus saw it, and he remembered. Some nights, usually just before a storm, when the sky turns silver and the streetlights buzz, there's a moment when the wind goes still, when even the trees seem to wait, and if you stand quietly, right at the center of the garden's old footprint, and close your eyes, you'll hear it, a voice, distant, still singing, not for us, but for something else, something that's always listening, on the other side of silence.